First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. Actually, that's what I love about British culture of pluralism and free speech. You know, they even invite a person with a speech, forget big data, to the big data week. That's actually great. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, as it was already said, I work for Yandex Data Factory, and this is a new branch of Yandex, which is, well, actually, I don't like when we are called Russian Google, because in fact, Yandex was launched a year before Google. So probably we should call Google American Yandex, right? Yeah, because very often when you speak to Europeans and you say, you know, yeah, we are kind of Google, but in Russia, they feel like we are kind of Volkswagen, but in Uruguay, right? But that's not true. The thing is, Yandex is very deep in science, and this is the only reason why Yandex is so successful in competing with its international competitor in Russia, still having its leadership. Okay, if it's already on, I can start, because we are not here to speak about Yandex, of course, but I'll try to explain what I meant. Is it working now? Yeah. What I meant when I was advising you to forget about big data and start thinking about machine learning. So everybody knows that big data is something, you know, very precious, fantastic. It's a new oil. It's going to bring us some, you know, new horizons. That's, after all, that's why we are all here, right, at Big Data Week. But I bumped into one very interesting survey. It's about bankers, but I don't think it's only bankers who struggle from it. You see, 76% of North American bankers, for some reason, are quite unhappy with their investments into big data. What's also interesting about this research is that European bankers and Asian bankers are less unhappy. And I believe I know why. Because basically, American bankers, they had more money to invest, and they started earlier. So their problem was they were investing into big money, into big data. Because if you think about big data the way we were thinking about it in 2012, 13, 14, it's about this 3V definition. But you know what? Just look at that. Does it say anything about value? Actually, all this describes is a problem, right? We now have a problem of this huge data, huge volumes. They are so various. They change at such a speed, we need to invent new ways to deal with it and maybe later have some value out of it. And that's why, in fact, the initial approach to how to deal with big data was typical approach of considering big data being IT problem, which means that we need to start with some big IT projects to, you know, clean up our data, join into huge warehouses and whatever. So we invest a lot of money into having our data stored nicely and processed nicely, still not really knowing what is the best way to extract value out of it. And this is, from my point of view, is the biggest problem of big data. In fact, when we just started Yandex Data Factory, we were saying that we are offering big data solutions. We do not say it anymore. We hate when we are called big data solutions company. We try to provide totally different types of solutions, which is machine learning solutions. And here I'm going to oppose my esteemed colleague from Tableau, because this is exactly what was shown. By the way, presentation was gorgeous. I love that very much. It really looks fantastic, right? On the other hand, the problem is, okay, we have all this data, and we have this human to ask them. And now imagine, okay, you know everything about this wheel, and then you have hundreds of thousands of such wheels and Wendy's you need to think about. You can drill down into each and every one of them and ask all these kind of questions. But what are you doing next? How do you act on it? Do you have like thousands of analysts to think each and every person in your customer base? I don't think so. That's why we believe that the real value is not here. I mean, okay, the real value you can easily and quickly achieve. Because, in fact, of course, you still need this traditional BI empowered by big data and new visualization tools and new analytical tools. You need that because, so far, our very smart machines cannot help you with your strategy. This is something you need to think about. And this is why you need this traditional BI results, which is decision support insights, right? But what you can actually have quite quickly and measure quite efficiently is totally different types of outcome. That's how we think will actually look like our future with the big data. Do you see any different from what you've seen yesterday? No? Good. Because that's exactly what's going to happen. You will not see it. It doesn't change much, the beautiful way. we'll just have a lot of small functional algorithms working in the places where previously humans were. Getting insights to make decisions, yeah, sure, it may get you some value. The problem is, and that's probably why those bankers are so unhappy, it's really hard to measure. Okay, you now know better who your customers are, and you probably can be more informed in formulating your strategy. And probably in 4 or 5 years, you will know where you're right or wrong with your strategy. But what you can do today, and you can start measuring this value from the day one of implementing the project, is using machine learning on this data you have to automate routine decision making. And again, I'm here opposing my esteemed colleague from Tableau, because I do think that we have a lot of places to replace humans with machines. And that's not bad for humans. Actually, these places are about routine decisions, about something quite boring. Let me probably explain and give you some examples. But first, machine learning. Machine learning is the thing nobody, well, except for scientists, have heard about probably up to 2014. It was something geeky. Nobody knew this word, as I said, except for scientists. But machine learning is actually around from 50s, 60s. It's for a long time. But something changed just lately, in 2015. And this is a quote from an executive guide to machine learning written by McKinsey, right? So it's something which already has to do with business. By the way, it's not on the slides, but maybe you had a chance to watch these BBC debates, which were very interesting. A few months ago, at BBC, it's a very good time, they are actually discussing the consequences of machine learning algorithms, something which was called artificial intelligence, which called AI in the previous time, in the 70s. So now it becomes something pretty much everybody should know about, right? And especially, of course, if you are thinking about the future of your business. One more quote from Business Insider and Harvard Business Review. At the whole issue, the main topic, how do you live with that? How do you build your business around that? So, as you can imagine, that's now the time. But why? What happened? Of course, we all heard about this, famous examples of Deep Blue being able to win in chess, which we, for a long time, thought is impossible, right? Or this Google car, self-driving car. And again, for a long time, we were thinking that it's impossible for a machine to replace us in that. But probably when you look at these examples, you ask yourself, okay, but what it has to do with my business, right? We are not playing chess for money, for work. So what is it about? And we are not drivers. Why it's important? Well, let me give you another example, probably, from our business, from Yandex business. Yandex is not only search, it's a lot of other web services. And one of its services is actually news, Yandex News. And if you look at the audience of Yandex News, you will see that comparative to online news resources, it should be somewhere in like top 10 in the world. We have a lot of readers. 23 million monthly readers for Yandex News. Now, here's the question. What do you think? What is the size of the editorial team of Yandex News? You have probably guessed already, right? It's 0. There are no editors, like literally. We have 5 top news of this particular moment. They are refreshed every 2 or 3 minutes, I don't remember exactly, which is automatically filtered out of all the news around, aggregated by topics. The best headline is chosen and put at the main page of Yandex. That's something which works. Yeah, we still have a lot of people working on that, of course. They're just not editorial. They are developers, software developers, and data scientists. But again, it's not just about our business. There are many, many places where you can do that. And here are just a few examples we had with our consumers, for example, or with our customers. One of very interesting projects we've done for online gaming company. It seems that in online games, there is kind of a life cycle for a customer, right, for a user. Someone starts playing, then at some point they kind of got sucked in, and now they start playing more. And after some period, they either become bored and they churn out, so stop using service, or they actually become hardcore, go work with clients, and so on. And of course, it's in interest of publisher to make sure that the customer stays with them as long as possible. How do you do that? Well, not by analyzing each of them, drilling down into their data. What you can actually do, you can use machine learning algorithms to build predictive models. You can look at your historical data, and you can see how people were behaving before leaving the company and what were the patterns for people who stay longer. And these patterns are actually quite complex. They cannot be visualized or explained in any ways because usually this model, which describes that, includes at least thousands of different factors. It's really hard to just explain to a human. So when you use such a model, you immediately are able to predict which of the customers are going to leave you, let's say, in the next month. Well, of course, it's probabilistic, but you can easily measure how precise this prediction is, right? You just take this prediction, wait a month, and you see what happened. So you can easily say, does it work or not? And then there's the next step. You can predict what is probably the best next action to make sure that the customer stays with you. Because, well, it's an online game, right? There are a lot of factors you can influence on. You can, provide this player some nice artifact, for example, or invite them into some group or whatever. So there are a lot of different ways to influence their behavior. And if you cannot, because it seems that there are two cases. In one case, you can actually do something and people will stay with you. But in some other cases, they're just tired. They are just bored out. They burned out. They don't want you anymore. And in this case, because it's a gaming publisher, what the wise thing to do is to offer another game which this player probably will start with. So this is something which provides a lot of value. But what's the beauty of it is that this project takes 2 months. Doesn't require pretty much any upfront investments because all the data is already there. You do not need to build some beautiful warehouses. You just export the data the way they are. Even while they are probably dirty, sometimes unstructured, contain some errors, doesn't matter because machine learning algorithms actually, very often they are able, of course, if it's not 80% bullshit, your data, if it's just some normal percentage of errors, they can just filter it out. It's not a problem at all. So that's just one of examples. Another example, and again, it was very illustrative, is in retail business. And this particular example was done for a retail bank, but it works pretty much the same way for any retail business. The beauty of this project was, it was one of our first projects. We didn't have any experience working with banking before, and we came to this huge consumer bank and said, you know what, you have your upsell, cross-sell activity, but we believe that if we apply our machine learning model, we can do it much better. We can target your offers much better, you just get more money. And they said, guys, you are crazy. Right? We have our analysts, like a team of 8 analysts. They have all the Teradata and all these tools to analyze the data, and they decide what should be sent, which offer should be sent to each customer to maximize our revenue. Right? They're working on that. They know this banking from 10 years ago. They really are experts. What are you going to bring? You have no idea how this works. And we said, yes, but if you have the data, we can do that. And what is nice about it, you don't need to trust us. You just need to experiment. Let's take a small slice of your customer base, small random slice. And for this particular slice, we do just the same offers. The only difference is we are sending these offers according to our recommendations, what our machine learning predictive model says, not to recommendations of your analysts. And then you measure the difference. And you can say how much money you will earn additionally if you implement this solution. And it seems to be 13% more, which is huge. It works the same way for many other industries. Because where is the data? We can analyze them. And this is an example with CERN, Large Hadron Collider, where we analyze not behavioral data, but the data from equipment about these proton collisions, helping physicists to find rare events. And again, it was very successful. So what is my point? This is a very famous quote from IBM, right? But the interpretation of it, I'm going to give you is slightly different. Because if you think about it, it means that the data grows on the exponential scale, which also means that big data is not something unique. It means that in 10 years, you will not actually care about gathering data. It will not be that valuable asset because you have abundance of data around. Your actual problem will be what to do with this data, which data not to store, how to live with that. That would be a problem. You know, it's just like with search engines. In 1999, there was how would you compare the quality of search on how many results the search can find? Because the internet was small and it was about finding things. What is it about today? It's not about finding things, right? You have millions and millions of results on pretty much any request. It is about how good the search engines are in understanding what are you thinking about asking this particular request. And the same thing is going to happen with data. So here's our prediction. I don't think we'll have much more big data investments, hopefully, in the next 10 years. But what I do think, right after people start adopting these technologies, and in examples I gave you, they can see results just in a few months after a start, it becomes huge. With this particular example, with the bank, after the first project, we accomplished the second one, and then they said, we need a little bit of time to think. They took 2 or 3 months. They got back with a list of 36 projects they would like to talk with us about. Right? That's how it's going to work. That's why I think in 10 years, in all the places where these decisions are not actually good for humans to make, because they are routine decisions, right? There are some KPIs, specific KPIs we want to optimize. There is enough data to build this prediction on it. And we can experiment and measure how good we are in improving these KPIs. And especially if we can take automated action, like sending the offer or providing this artifact in an online game, we will have algorithms doing this work because they are so much better in it. OK. And this is the last quote from the same executive guide to machine learning I mentioned before. I almost missed it. Just take a look at that. Machine learning emerges as mainstream management tool. Have you thought about machine learning as mainstream management tool? No? It's time to start. Thank you very much. OK, and we have 2 questions. Please. How does that work?
Yeah, you say the question, and then
OK, I'll try to.
Just a question of mechanics. I mean, do you take companies' data and then put it in a separate factory and run your own?
Oh, it's a great question.
On their premises?
It's actually a great question.
Can you repeat it?
Yeah. Question was, are we taking companies' data to analyze it and build predictive models or do something else? Actually, we do all kinds of things. But why it is a great question? Because it's about the value of data. Different data actually has different value depending on specific use case you want to use it. But the thing is, you do not really know that before you start using it. And let me just give you a few examples. One is on credit scoring. In one of our projects, we were asked by a big bank to try and see if adding some social network data could actually improve their scoring procedures, scoring predictions. And we experimented. So we did produced one model without this data and another model with this data. And what we have seen is that, well, there is slight improvement, but it's so small it doesn't really worth it. So the company's data has so much stronger signal on the prediction of what people will do that they don't really need social network data. But that was a huge bank, 45 million customers, right? And they really have a lot of data. On the other hand, our colleagues, well, not our, their colleagues, Cabbage, which are providing, which are lending money to some small lenders, they have seen that the social network data is hugely helpful because they have much less, meaningful signal within their own data. So it depends on the case. One more funny fact: for online game, very important factor added to the company's data was weather data. We used weather data to enrich our models because you know what? When it's freezing cold outside, people are much more eager to stay home and play online games. And that's exactly the time to offer them that artifact. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It was a really fascinating and interesting presentation.
Thank you.
I'd agree with most of what you said, and I think certainly the real value of machine learning is in being able to intervene in real time to support a change in behaviour. I think there are a couple of sort of interesting issues that obviously come out of what you're talking about there. One is in the redeployment of staff that actually whose jobs are going to be taken over by machines, and increasing those who are in far more skilled areas of the workplace. And the second issue, I guess, is to do with accountability. I mean, if you've got publicly quoted companies who are making sort of some fundamental decisions based on what machines are telling them to do, that raises some interesting questions, I guess, in relation to...
Yeah, let me start with the last question. The second question was about some fundamental decisions that company can make based on this machine learning data prediction. What about accountability? Who's responsible for that? The answer is very simple. They don't. I mean, these fundamental decisions, something strategic. And that's not where we actually recommend to, well, at least start with using these machine learning algorithms. Just because strategic decision means that you will see result in what, 4 years, 5 years, right? And machine learning means that you need to be able to try to experiment and measure results and learn from these results and improve. So this is something more for 5 cycles. Probably we can come to this problem about fundamental decisions, but it's not today and probably not even in the next 10 years. The second question was about these people, humans being replaced by machines. What happens with them? What's about that? Well, I'm an optimist. So that's probably why we like to compare what happens now with Industrial Revolution in Britain in the 18th century. Because that is actually very similar. The machines were not replacing some low-level personnel. Actually, they were replacing middle class. They were replacing experienced workers, which were like at the core of the society. And that was disaster. It was really huge, right? A lot of people were struggling for some time. But overall, in few decades, first of all, most of them, they worked, right? They had some new types of work we couldn't even think about before, like, working with these machines. And second, overall level of life of the whole population improved. So that's what I believe in. I think the more we free people from the routine decision, from the things that can be automated, actually the better, because we can just do something more meaningful. Thanks.